More than 40 years have passed since Growing Pains first brought the Seaver family into American living rooms, and the show still carries the particular warmth of something that felt completely safe at the time. A psychiatrist father who had answers, a mother finding her own ambitions, children whose worst mistakes could be solved before the hour was up. That was the agreement the show made with its audience, and the audience kept it for 7 seasons. But the people behind that agreement, the actors who walked through that front door week after week, lived lives that had no writers, no commercial breaks, and no guaranteed resolution. What happened to them after the credits rolled is a story of love that held and love that collapsed, of private battles the cameras never found, of reinventions that shocked people who thought they knew who these actors were, and of deaths that arrived far too early. There is at least one name on this list that will stop you cold the moment you hear it. Settle in. This is going to ask something of you. Number 1, we have Alan Thicke as Dr. Jason Seaver, the calm at the center of the house, the television father who listened, reasoned, and somehow always knew the right thing to say at the kitchen table when no real father in America actually did. Thicke was 38 years old when Growing Pains premiered in September 1985. He played Dr. Jason Seaver for all 166 episodes across 7 seasons, and his Golden Globe nomination in 1988 was the industry's formal acknowledgement of what viewers already knew, that he made the whole show's emotional logic feel earned. In 2026, he would have been 79. After the show ended in 1992, he worked steadily. Guest roles, a reality series called Unusually Thicke in 2014 and 2015, and a guest appearance in the pilot of NBC's This Is Us in October 2016, filmed barely 8 weeks before he died. Beyond acting, Thicke had composed the theme songs for Different Strokes and The Facts of Life, 2 of the defining sounds of an entire television era, and received almost no public credit for either during his lifetime. He was the architect of sounds people would hum for decades without knowing his name was attached to them. Thicke married 3 times. His first marriage, to actress and singer Gloria Loring, lasted from 1970 to 1984 and produced 2 sons, Brennan and Robin, the latter of whom would grow up to become one of the most recognizable voices in global pop music. His second marriage, to Miss World 1990, Gina Marie Tolson, lasted 3 years in the mid-1990s. His third, to Argentinian actress Tania Kalau, began in 2005 and ended only with his death. What viewers couldn't have known was the physical fragility hidden inside the picture of ease he projected. He appeared in good health, continued playing hockey regularly into his late 60s, gave no public indication that the arterial wall inside his chest was quietly compromised. Alan Thicke died on December 13, 2016. He was 69 years old. His aorta ruptured, a type A aortic dissection, the same catastrophic failure that had killed John Ritter 13 years earlier, while he was playing ice hockey with his youngest son Carter at a rink in Burbank. Witnesses reported that he was still joking with Carter as paramedics arrived. He did not make it to the hospital in time. Dr. Jason Seaver was the father who always made room at the table, and Alan Thicke left behind proof that such a man can exist, and that losing one that suddenly is a grief that doesn't come with a resolution. Number 2, we have Joanna Kerns as Maggie Seaver, the woman who showed a generation of girls what a mother looked like when she wanted something for herself and refused to apologize for it. Kerns was 32 when Growing Pains premiered. She had competed in the Olympic gymnastics trials in 1968, trained as a dancer, studied under Lee Strasberg, and spent the better part of a decade grinding through guest spots before the role of Maggie Seaver finally arrived. Her chemistry with Alan Thicke during the audition, which included an accidental kiss on the nose that made both producers laugh, was immediate and obvious. She earned every one of those 7 seasons. At 73 in 2026, Joanna Kerns has built a second career that rivals the first. After Growing Pains ended in 1992, she directed 1 episode of the show in its final season and found the work transformative. She has since directed episodes of Grey's Anatomy, This Is Us, Pretty Little Liars, Scrubs, ER, Dawson's Creek, Fuller House, and dozens of other series, becoming one of the most consistently employed television directors of her generation and doing it in a medium that has historically resisted women behind the camera. Kerns married commercial producer Richard Kerns in 1976. The marriage lasted 9 years and produced a daughter, Ashley Cooper. She later married architect Mark Appleton in 1994, and the two separated after 25 years together, with Kerns filing for divorce in August 2019. In November 2016, the same month as Alan Thicke's death, Kerns received a breast cancer diagnosis following a routine screening. She made the decision to have a double mastectomy in December, rather than pursue repeated lumpectomies, and was later given a clear result. She spoke openly about the experience, framing the double mastectomy as a deliberate choice, not a surrender. In 2024, Kerns acknowledged publicly that she had written a character reference letter in 2003 for a Growing Pains crew member later convicted of sexually abusing a minor. She stated she had been misinformed about the circumstances when she wrote it, and would not have done so had she known the truth. Maggie Seaver was the mother who came back to herself, and Joanna Kerns remained a woman who kept reinventing what that meant on her own terms, one episode at a time. Number 3. We have Kirk Cameron as Mike Seaver, the charming, deflecting older brother who turned every mistake into a punchline and somehow got away with it every time. Cameron was 14 years old when Growing Pains began in 1985. By the time he was 16, he was earning $50,000 a week and appearing on the covers of Teen Beat and Tiger Beat. He was nominated for 2 Golden Globes during the show's run and represented a particular flavor of teenage male cool that required almost no apparent effort. At 55 in 2026, Cameron is recognizable, but barely. Around age 17, during the height of his fame, he converted to evangelical Christianity, and the conversion was total. By the show's final seasons, he was declining storylines he considered morally objectionable and publicly criticizing some producers. After Growing Pains, he starred briefly in the WB sitcom Kirk before redirecting his career almost entirely toward faith. Fireproof in 2008, a Christian marriage drama made for roughly $500,000, earned more than $33 million. He co-founded the Way of the Master Ministry with evangelist Ray Comfort and has spent the past 2 decades touring with a marriage conference series and producing faith-based documentaries. Cameron met his wife, actress Chelsea Noble, on the set of Growing Pains, where she played Mike's girlfriend in the later seasons. They married on July 20, 1991, and have remained together more than 30 years. They have 6 children, 4 adopted and 2 biological, and Cameron has made their faith-centered family life the central subject of everything he puts into the world. What the average viewer didn't know is that Cameron's conversion would have consequences for someone else on the set, consequences that would follow that person for decades. That story belongs to the next entry. Mike Seaver was the kid who could charm his way out of anything, but Kirk Cameron grew into a man who decided there was only one authority worth charming toward. Number 4. We have Tracey Gold as Carol Seaver, the overachieving middle child who made intelligence feel like both a superpower and a burden, and who wanted desperately to be taken seriously. Gold was 16 years old when Growing Pains began in 1985. She appeared in all 166 episodes of the series, an unbroken presence from the very first season to the very last. And her work as Carol was the emotional anchor of the Seaver siblings, the one who showed up, who studied, who cared about getting things right. At 56 in 2026, Tracey Gold has lived a life that bears almost no resemblance to the one Carol Seaver was living on screen. After the show ended, she worked steadily in television movies throughout the 1990s and into the 2000s, including a film specifically about anorexia, For the Love of Nancy, in 1994. She married Roby Marshall on October 8, 1994. They had been introduced by co-star Joanna Kerns, and the two have 4 sons together. In 2003, Gold published a memoir about her eating disorder, Room to Grow. By 1991, during the final season of Growing Pains, Gold had developed severe anorexia that she later described as having dropped her weight to near 80 pounds. The scripts during one particular season had repeatedly scripted jokes about Carol's weight, written in, allowed to air, and whatever internal machinery those jokes set in motion eventually became clinical. She was suspended from the show for her physical appearance, her absence written into the storyline as Carol studying abroad in London. The disease had been present in her since childhood, but television production had watered it for years without anyone stopping to ask what they were doing. On September 3, 2004, while driving home from a Labor Day barbecue with her husband and 3 young children, Gold lost control of her SUV on California Route 118. The vehicle rolled down an embankment. Her oldest son, 7-year-old Sage, suffered a broken collarbone and a head laceration. Gold was arrested for felony DUI, pleaded guilty in 2005, and served 3 years of probation. She spoke publicly about the incident multiple times with the same directness she had brought to speaking about her anorexia. Carol Seaver was the one who got everything right, and Tracey Gold built a life that shows how much more honest it is to survive imperfectly than to perform perfection. Number 5. We have Jeremy Miller as Ben Seaver, the little brother, the instigator, the one who followed Mike into every situation he probably shouldn't have, and then ran faster to get out of it. Miller was 8 years old when Growing Pains premiered in the fall of 1985. He grew up entirely on that set, playing all 7 seasons and appearing in both reunion films. And by the time the show ended in 1992, the camera had been his primary reality for the better part of a decade. At 49 in 2026, Miller is sober and vocal about what the years between then and now actually cost him. After Growing Pains wrapped, he enrolled briefly at USC before pursuing a passion for cooking and training at Le Cordon Bleu. He launched his own catering company, No Small Affair, in the 2000s, which collapsed in the 2008 financial crisis. In April 2014, while working as a spokesperson for a rehabilitation organization, Miller disclosed publicly that he had had his first drink at age 4, and that once the show ended, what had been a hidden relationship with alcohol became a full collapse. He described blacking out daily at his worst, punching holes in walls, frightening his stepsons. He hit his lowest point with a DUI arrest that he described as the thing he was most ashamed of, not because he was caught, but because of how many times before that he had driven drunk and nothing happened. On the brink of homelessness, Miller made 2 phone calls, one to Alan Thicke, who helped him find work in a restaurant, and one to Kirk Cameron, who also stepped in. Both men responded. Miller has been in recovery since 2011. He is married to Joni Miller. By his own account, the alcoholism that preceded their relationship caused real damage. He described frightening his stepsons during his drinking years, and he has spoken about physical altercations during his worst period with a lack of euphemism that is itself a form of accountability. His 3 stepsons, and his relationship with them now, appear to be a central part of why he chose to get sober and stay that way. Ben Seaver was the kid who caused trouble and got away with it, but Jeremy Miller became the man who stopped running from what it actually cost him. Number 6. We have Ashley Johnson as Chrissy Seaver, the baby of the family, the little blonde girl the whole show gathered around to protect, the one who made everyone in the room go soft. Johnson joined Growing Pains in 1990 at age 7 for the show's 6th and 7th seasons. She was playing opposite a cast of trained adults who had been working together for 5 years, and by all accounts, including her own, she thrived. She has spoken about Alan Thicke with particular warmth, describing him as the best television father a child actor could have had. At 42 in 2026, Ashley Johnson has built one of the most genuinely unusual careers of anyone from this cast. She appeared in What Women Want in 2000, The Help in 2011, The Avengers in 2012, and ran 5 seasons as a lead on NBC's Blind Spot from 2015 to 2020. As a voice actress, she voiced Gretchen in Recess, Tara in Teen Titans, and multiple beloved characters across animation and gaming. Her voice and motion capture performance as Ellie in The Last of Us in its 2020 sequel won her 2 BAFTA awards for Best Performer and changed what the industry understood about emotional storytelling in games. Since 2015, she has been a founding cast member of Critical Role, the Dungeons & Dragons streaming series that grew into a full creative empire, and she serves as president of the Critical Role Foundation. Johnson was in a long-term relationship with fellow Critical Role cast member Brian W. Foster. The two worked closely together for years, their partnership visible and publicly celebrated in the Critical Role community. They also collaborated professionally on multiple projects. In May 2023, Johnson filed a restraining order against Foster, with court documents alleging a sustained pattern of physical and verbal abuse. She was later joined by 6 other women in a civil lawsuit making similar allegations. She chose to speak publicly about all of it. Chrissy Seaver was the one everyone instinctively gathered around to protect, and Ashley Johnson grew into a woman who made clear she was entirely capable of protecting herself. Number 7, we have Leonardo DiCaprio as Luke Brower, the homeless teenager who moved into the Seaver house in the final season, the stray who had nowhere to go and somehow made the whole show feel alive again. DiCaprio was 16 years old when he joined Growing Pains for the show's 7th and final season, beginning in the fall of 1991. He had worked before, a small role in the horror film Critters 3 that same year, but the Seaver family home was where mainstream America first saw his face. Joanna Kerns described the young DiCaprio as especially intelligent and disarming for his age. He was eventually written out of the final episodes, not because of any failure, but because a film called This Boy's Life had come along and needed him. At 51 in 2026, Leonardo DiCaprio is something the television that launched him could not have predicted. This Boy's Life in 1993 led to What's Eating Gilbert Grape, which led to his first Academy Award nomination at age 19. Titanic in 1997 made him the most photographed man on Earth. 5 Oscar nominations across the following 2 decades: The Aviator, Blood Diamond, The Wolf of Wall Street, and The Revenant, which finally brought the statue in 2016, and a parallel career as one of the most prominent climate activists in Hollywood, through his foundation and multiple documentaries. DiCaprio has never married. He has had long-term relationships with a number of well-known women over the decades, each one documented and discussed in public forums as if the relationship itself were a cultural event. He has spoken, when pressed, about his commitment to his work and his environmental advocacy as the organizing forces of his adult life. He has maintained close friendships with the same people for 30 years. His most visible long-term relationship with his father, George DiCaprio, who remained present through every phase of his son's career, was something he has described with open affection in interviews over the years. What the average viewer might not fully absorb is the particular strangeness of the timeline. The biggest movie star of his generation learned how to hold a scene by playing a homeless kid in the Seavers' living room, in a show that was in its final season, in a role created partly to save the ratings. It didn't save the ratings, but it saved something worth saving. Luke Brower was the stray who found a family, and Leonardo DiCaprio became proof that sometimes the world's greatest talent passes through the most ordinary doors. Number 8, we have Andrew Koenig as Richard Boner Stabone, Mike Seaver's best friend, the perpetual sidekick, the reliable goofball whose name became a schoolyard constant for a generation of kids who didn't fully understand why they were laughing but laughed anyway. Koenig was 16 when Growing Pains premiered in 1985 and played Boner, Mike's loyal, big-hearted, not very bright best friend, across the first 4 seasons. He appeared in 25 episodes before his character was written out in 1989, with Boner enlisting in the United States Marine Corps. He was the son of Walter Koenig, the actor who had played Chekhov on the original Star Trek series, and grew up with a father who understood exactly what the television industry was capable of offering and capable of taking back. After Growing Pains, Koenig worked in independent films, directed and edited short films of his own, performed stand-up comedy at the Improv in Los Angeles, and threw himself into human rights activism, traveling to Burma in 2007 to visit refugee camps, and being arrested in 2008 while protesting China's support for Burma's military government at the Rose Bowl parade in Pasadena. Koenig never married. He lived in Venice Beach and built his world around his work, his activism, and a small circle of friends and collaborators who described him as creative, intellectually restless, and generous to the point of giving away things he needed. His father Walter described him as private and inward. Those who knew him best said he was the funniest person in any room and the hardest to reach. He had battled depression for years. His family later reported that he had stopped taking medication for it approximately a year before his death. In early February 2010, unknown to his parents at the time, Koenig quietly gave away his possessions, moved out of his apartment in Venice Beach, and traveled north to Vancouver, a city he loved. Andrew Koenig died on or around February 16, 2010, in Vancouver's Stanley Park. He was 41 years old. His death was by suicide. His father, Walter, who had flown to Vancouver to help search for his son, was nearby when friends found him on February 25th. Walter Koenig spoke to reporters at the park within an hour of finding his son. He asked anyone who was struggling to please talk to someone before making a final decision, because there were people who cared. He stood in the park and said those words with his son 20 feet away. Boners to Bone was the friend everyone took for granted, and Andrew Koenig left behind a life that asks us to look more carefully at the people standing just outside the frame. Number 9. We have Julie McCullough as Julie Costello, Mike Seaver's fiancée. The warm-hearted young woman who arrived in Season 5 made Mike grow up a little and then disappeared so abruptly that audiences barely had time to understand what had happened. McCullough was 24 when she joined Growing Pains for the 1989 to 1990 season, playing the woman Mike Seaver was falling seriously in love with. The relationship that gave Kirk Cameron's character its first genuine emotional weight. She played the role warmly and well. She was, by every account, a professional. At 60 in 2026, McCullough's relationship with the show remains one of the most specific and uncomfortable stories the industry produced in that era. In 1986, 3 years before she joined the cast, she had appeared as the February centerfold in Playboy. When Kirk Cameron, newly converted and firm in his convictions, discovered this, he reportedly insisted she be removed from the show. She was. Her character was written out as having left Mike at the altar. She was not given a formal explanation that satisfied the circumstances. McCullough subsequently spoke about it publicly on multiple occasions across the following decades, describing the experience with directness that made clear it had cost her something real. McCullough has been protective of her personal life and has not made her relationships or family a public subject. What has been public and what she has chosen to make public is her professional experience. What happened to her on that set, and what it felt like to have her career trajectory altered by someone else's moral objection to something she did before she ever met him.